Okay, welcome everybody to a new season of Squash Canada's Coach Professional Development webinar series. We're very excited to kick off this season's series with today's presentation that we think you're very much going to enjoy. Essentially, it's video analysis and how to improve squash through video analysis, presented by Ahad Raza. And I won't get into too much about Ahad because he'll probably get into that himself. But essentially, in a nutshell, he is a former PSA athlete, certified personal trainer, high performance squash coach, and he's also a recently published author on mindset. So he is going to go through this great topic today, video analysis. And if you have questions, please type them into the chat and we'll facilitate those questions as we go. Or you can hang on to them to the end of the presentation, and then we can get you to turn on your webcam and ask the question as you see fit. So whatever your preferences is fine. We're hoping to make this a very engaging presentation throughout the next 45 to 60 minutes. And then when we're finished, we'll just touch base on upcoming webinars for the new season. So other than that, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Take it away, Ahad.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And thanks everyone for being here. So, if you guys are comfortable, feel free to turn on your webcams. I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. I can also see your faces and make sure I'm not putting anyone to sleep, which is always helpful. So my first question for you guys is, who has done some degree of video analysis before, and for what purpose? So if you want to answer, you put your hand up, and I'll call someone's name from whomever I see. So Ray, I see your hand up. Please unmute yourself, and then you can chat.
Actually, I was just moving the light out of the way so that it wouldn't.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. No problem. Anyone else? Sebastian, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I've been using video analysis for my athletes and for myself for quite a long time, and I think it's a great tool. It's the best way to see what can improve, what you're doing right, what can all the little links or little kinks you have in your biomechanics and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to see how you can help me get better at doing that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So that's cool, guys. Let's jump in. So the first thing I wanted to talk about briefly is, why should you care about anything that I have to say? And the reason I mention that is because when I'm learning, I want to make sure that I'm learning from someone who I trust to some extent, who I respect to some extent. And I want to take just a minute to talk a little bit about some of my background. So as Jeff mentioned, I played PSA for a few years. I had a different life before that where I completed my education. I worked at a financial institution. I trained and competed provincially and nationally. And then at the age of 30, I decided, what, if I don't pursue my dream of playing PSA just for myself, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And that's when I took that jump, and I went in and played some PSA, and I coached all throughout, but now I've really shifted more to high performance coaching as well. So I'm a certified trainer, and recently part of like a co-authored project on mindset in the Successful Spirit book that you see there. And then a few months ago, I started this YouTube channel where I started analyzing a bunch of videos of different professionals, and I'm breaking down tactics, technique, mindset, all sorts of stuff on the YouTube channel. And it's picked up pretty quickly in the last few months, and people seem to be really enjoying it. It's called AR Proformance, which is kind of the business name that I go by. So if you search that up on YouTube, you guys can find that and get some ideas from there as well about some analyses that I do. But the most important thing that I wanted to mention briefly was the philosophy and the approach. So when I think about, and I'm hoping that this resonates with you guys. So when I think about success, there's this amazing definition of success that former UCLA basketball coach John Wooden put forth. And he basically said that success is the peace of mind attained by knowing that you put the most effort that you were capable of. So I like to think of success in those terms. I like to approach everything with a beginner's mind or an empty mind. So you're always open to learning, no matter how much of an expert you are. Someone else has different experiences, and different perspectives shed light on some of the gaps in our own knowledge. And then I like to approach things from a place of service and impact. So doing my best to help others and help others grow the same way that I like to grow as a human being, as a squash coach, as a father, as a human, holistically. So that's a little bit about me. So here's some stuff about video analysis. So the main first question I ask myself is, will video analysis benefit you? And I know Sebastian already said yes, it has, and he's been using it for himself and his athletes. I truly believe that if you have that sort of growth mindset, you want to learn, you're ready to try something different if you've never tried it before, I think it will be extremely helpful. And we'll get into why in a minute. And then your goals will also determine whether video analysis will be helpful for you. So are you looking to become a better squash player yourself? I guarantee it'll help. If you're looking to become a better coach just to learn the way pros do things, I guarantee it'll help. If you're looking to become a better coach for your students, it will definitely help because you'll be able to see things on the video that you might miss in real time. So those are some initial thoughts. Now, there's another little philosophy piece I want to start off with, and it's this idea that the more we raise our awareness, we increase our perspective and possibility of what exists. So if there's something that you've never seen before, all of a sudden you see or hear about it, and this new world almost opens up for you. And when this new world opens up for you, you can now make different choices in this new world that you previously didn't know about. And those choices can, if you take action, lead to different results, which previously would have been completely closed off to you. So, from my perspective, awareness is the most important thing. It's sort of like the foundation. And I'm hoping here through this presentation, we raise your awareness about certain things that you might not be currently aware of when it comes to video analysis. And then hopefully the ideas will start spinning in your brain about how you can use everything. So some specifics. I don't know about you, but whenever I've watched myself on video, I'm like, oh my God, I can get so much better in this area or this area or this area. And until you see yourself on the video, it's really, really hard to identify that because, I mean, there's no objective view of it. So that's number one. It's super, super easily accessible. All you need is a cell phone. You don't need any kind of recording devices the way you did 15, 20 years ago. You can study your own game or the game holistically and expand your knowledge. And this part about seeing what players do versus what they say is, in my opinion, is really critical, because this is one of the things I think with some of the best players in the world, they have reached such an elite level that unless they have the ability to break it down in their mind and simplify it, it's really, really hard to understand some of the things that they're talking about because most of us don't have that skill to actually execute it. So by looking at videos, especially of pros, if that's the level you're interested in, you can see certain things and you can actually break it down as opposed to someone else telling you in a way that might not make sense because you can't quite comprehend everything. So I think video analysis is also extremely helpful for that reason. If you want to share, if you have questions and you're uncertain about something, video is fantastic because you can share it with other coaches. You might say, I might say, hey, Sebastian, there's something that I just can't figure out about this student. Maybe you've seen something, maybe you've done something, here's a video, take a look, buddy. What do you think? And if you have that sort of relationship, it can create that sort of community and rapport as well, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Because if we live in different parts of the country, we can't physically see our students, right? So this is one way of doing it. And then this is one of the biggest benefits of video, in my opinion, is you can see things in slow motion. So you can see the subtleties of what's going on. You can analyze things in a very, very different way when it is slow. You can, when you're looking at something in real time, it's happening so quickly that a lot of stuff just like passes over our heads and we pick up maybe one or two things. But when you look at the video in slow motion, you can look at all of the details. You can actually think about it because you can pause the video. And then you can think about strategies in that moment about how you can try to work through and correct some of these things, or how you can apply some of the things that you're seeing if you're watching a pro to your own game or to one of your students' games or whatever it is. So I think the slow motion piece is really, really helpful. And then from a tracking perspective, actually, video is really cool. So you can actually see a video of yourself or one of your students today, and then 3 months from today or 6 months from today, and then you have like a tangible way to measure progress, which normally you can do, through some drills where you can look at target hitting, how many can I hit in, in a row, etc. But the video gives you that visual cue of, hey, I've been working on this technique. Is it looking better? Is it more consistent when I actually see it today versus 3 months from now or 3 months ago? So that's one thing. The other thing, and this is comes down to, so there are two other aspects, sorry. One of them is a post-match analysis. So if you are playing a tournament and you take a video of it, you can actually break down all of your strengths, your opportunities, where you broke down mentally, maybe where you broke down physically. You can see all this sort of stuff and create game plans based on tournament matches, which you can, and I highly recommend for any kind of competitive or elite athlete, you do that after a match. But when you have that video, it becomes far easier to capture all of the details that you might have missed just based off of your memory. And as I'm sure most of you guys know, I'm sure you all play squash. When we get into matches, sometimes you finish a match and you're like, what the heck just happened? And you don't remember anything. So the video, and I see you guys nodding because this has happened many times. So the video will give you a clear indication of what actually happened. And then for those of you guys that are into the mental side of it, you can, when you're thinking about mindset and putting yourself in the right frame of mind, one strategy that a lot of people use is that they try to visualize positive moments from the past so that you can get yourself back into a positive frame of mind. Now, if you actually start videoing several of your matches on a more common basis, there might be a match where you play phenomenally well, and actually seeing that can really help with that visualization aspect, and it can help with that mental prep or that mental routine that goes into your training going into a match. Now, there's obviously going to be some element of luck, you know, that you record the match where you play really, really well, unless you're recording every single match, which is possible too, for sure. But from a visualization perspective, you can really see and feel and go back and live in that moment again so that you can experience it and then replicate that performance, or get closer to replicating that performance. So that's another benefit, in my opinion, of video analysis. So now, you know, high level, start to finish, what does it look like? I would suggest, and depending on the purpose of your analysis, I would suggest that you probably want to get clear on what your goal or the intention is from the analysis. And what I mean by that is, you know, for the YouTube channel, sometimes I go in, I don't have a specific intention. I watch a match, and then when certain things stick out to me, I'm like, oh, wow, that was really neat. Let me create a video on this. But that's a very different approach to it, because that's more for like entertainment kind of thing. If you're studying one of your students and you're saying, hey, you know, I feel like there's something that's going on with their movement that I can't quite pinpoint. Let me really focus this on the movement. And if the movement is your emphasis, you might angle your camera a certain way. You might look at one part of the court. You might only record it for a minute or two, because you don't need 40 minutes of movement unless you're looking for them, you know, when do they break down from a physical perspective. So all of these factors, if you know what you want to go in with, what you want to get out of it, then you can decide what your parameters should look like in advance. So I think that's really, really important. And this piece of intention, other than video analysis too, if you're teaching your athletes, whoever, yourself, setting an intention before a training session is so critical, because it's about just priming your brain. If you draw your attention to that one element, whether it's stepping up on the tee and volleying and hitting the ball early, that's the one main thing that's going on in your mind or in your athlete's mind. And now they're automatically just searching for that and trying to execute that. So I would encourage you to always set some form of an intention when you're training, coaching, or doing an analysis. What equipment do you need? Nowadays, really a cell phone, maybe a tripod if you really want, and then space, depending on what your goal is, right? If you want to record a full match, you obviously need enough space behind the court to capture the whole thing. If you don't, you might need to set it up maybe a little bit more staggered to the backhand if you feel like more of the game is played on the backhand compared to the forehand. If you're actually, I think I have a couple of images coming up here in a second. So I'll continue my thought in just a second. You need if you want, you can have a cell phone app. You don't really need it, but you can. You need a decent laptop. If you want to take it to that level and actually start processing and editing videos, then you need a decent laptop with enough RAM, enough computing power, a graphics card. Editing softwares, they're not that expensive, and I'll show you an example of that stuff in a minute. I use my phone, which is a Google Pixel 3, not a brand new phone, not a terrible phone by any means, but it serves my purposes. I had bought this little thing you see on the screen called a gimbal. It's basically just like stabilizes your camera when you move it around, so it allows it to be a little bit smoother. Again, it's a luxury, you don't need it. I just put this up. I did a little Google search about free swing apps. There are tons of apps that you can download where it's more for golf and stuff, but you can apply anything to it because you can slow-mo your swing and check it all out. So free apps everywhere. That's the laptop I use. It's a Lenovo laptop. It serves my purposes. The other thing you might need is, which you probably need, is you definitely want to get agreement from both players. And some clubs may have some kind of restriction. So you might want to ask, hey, is it okay if I record this? I don't think it'll be an issue from a coaching perspective. It's more if you're trying to create a program to monetize it, then the club might say something about that. So you want to have that conversation in advance. Again, depending on your intention or the goal, you might need only 2 minutes of video, or you might need a full match. So, actually, let me put this out to you guys right now. When might you need only 2 minutes, in what scenario, and when might you want to record a full match? What might you want to look for? And you can put your hand up if you're on video, or you can put an answer into the chat if you want to respond. Any thoughts? All right, Sebastian, go for it.
Okay.
Oh, Ray, okay, you can go. You're already unmuted. Why don't you go first, and then Sebastian can go next.
Okay, I've used it for swing analysis, just how their forehand or their backhand, their motion, preparation, racket swing, follow through.
Awesome. And how long did you have to record to get a good sense of that?
If the student is hitting repetitively, probably only about, less than a minute, maybe 2 minutes at the most.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at swing, where were you positioned? Where did you find it was best to capture the angle? What angle was best?
I usually I kept moving so that they could see from the back. If it was on their forehand and they're right-handed, of course, you're going to see their back of them. So you'd go in behind them as much as you can to behind them, and then in front, just to see those, so you could see all the angles.
Got it. Awesome. And actually, on that note as well, if you're thinking about contact point and stuff, you can go beside them, because then you can see whether they're hitting it early or late from the side view as well, if that's kind of something you're looking for.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Ray. Sebastian, any other thoughts or a different scenario?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it's just a swing, you might need only 2 minutes, but if you want like, I don't know, shot selection, you might need a full game. If you want to analyze their ability to implement a tactical game plan, you might need the whole match. Like, it all depends what your intention is, I guess.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anyone else? No, we're good. Okay, thanks, guys. And the last thing I would say is you want some degree of time, because depending on the length of analysis you want to complete, it does take time to review the video afterwards if you want to watch it. Because, if a match is 40 minutes, at least 40 minutes, plus times where you might slow it down or repeat things, and so on and so forth. I think you have to believe in the process. You have to realize that, hey, video analysis will give me a lot of benefit and it'll add a lot of value. So I think that passion and that desire for it probably needs to be there if you want to, if you're going to start doing this consistently, or at least use the tool. Okay, let's keep going from here. Let's get into some different aspects you can analyze. So in my opinion, the limitation of what you can analyze is just our own mind. Whatever knowledge we have at the moment, whatever experience we have at the moment, our level of creativity, that's going to limit what we can do. And the reason I say that is when I started creating these YouTube videos, I found that I just, like the first few I created, I was like, oh my God, like what can I possibly create? And then I started doing it. And every match I saw, like some new idea just kept popping up. And the deeper you kind of went into it and the more you immerse yourself in it, the more ideas just kind of keep coming, especially if you're curious and you want to figure out how and why things are happening. So I think that's kind of like my philosophy sort of statement up front. And then from there, this is where I want to continue to make it engaging. So if you wanted to analyze technique, and Ray, we already talked about the scenario. If you want to analyze technique, what aspects could you look at and how would you do it? So I'll just reiterate what Ray said. You want to look at the swing, the backswing, the contact point, the follow through, the swing path. Maybe you might, so if you just want to look at that, maybe you could even look waist up just to see those things. But if you wanted to start to look at, are they putting their weight into the shot? Are they balanced and stable? Well, then all of a sudden it can't be waist up, it has to be full body. So you got to look at all of those sorts of things to say, here's what I want to do, here's how I'm going to do it. So we talked about technique, so I'm not going to get into technique a ton. What I do want to talk about, and here's an example of, you know, how you could use a side view to say, where did you make contact with the ball? Where's your weight transfer? Did you, you know, if I took an earlier frame, I would see, did I rotate my shoulders in advance before I went to strike the ball? So you can see all of those things from the side view. Here's an example of like just a little screenshot I took from one of the videos I put on YouTube, just kind of showing the racket prep of Mustafa Sal as he's going into the back. So you could see he has that nice little V over here at the elbow. He also had his wrist up, which I didn't draw. So you have the little, you know, the cocked wrist. You could, for a lot of people struggle in this back left. So here you could, if you took the still frame of one of your students, they probably would not have been angled towards that back wall as much. They would probably have been facing the side wall. So that would be a clear indication for your student that, hey, you're not rotating enough. And you know what you could also do is you could show a little comparison of, say, this clip of this image of Asal versus your student and be like, hey, what's the difference between the two? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, this guy's like facing the back glass. He's like looking out of the court. I'm not even turned halfway as much as that. So, you know, little things like that can really make things stick out in the student's mind. So again, it doesn't take a ton of work. Like you go on YouTube, find any video, press pause, pretty much you can do it on your phone or on a laptop, just screenshot whatever it is that you want to see from the YouTube video. You have your student's video, you screenshot that, put them side by side. It's literally like a couple of minutes of extra work, depending on how long it takes you to find that YouTube clip, right? But basically in any pro match, you'll be able to find what you need in like 2 seconds because they're doing it all the time. So there's an example of how you can even show comparison, and then your student can really, really become aware of what's happening. And now they have a visual, because everyone, remember, we have different kind of learners, right? You could be visual, auditory, whatever it is, touch, kinesthetic. And the more you can show them, the better they'll learn. So now let's talk a little bit about tactics. So let's say you wanted to analyze tactics in a match. What might you look for when you're analyzing a video? Let's just have a little brainstorming session. Anyone can jump in, and I'm just looking at a couple of chat comments over here.
Just shot selection. Are they going cross court too often, going deep or going short too often? Basic movement stuff as well. Are they getting to the tee? Mm-hmm. Things like that.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you, Jeff. And depending on the level of the player, you could take that to be as advanced as you want, or if they're a beginner, it would be as simple as possible. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of some of the YouTube videos I've created to show different kind of tactical elements. But before we go there, I just wanted to brainstorm with you guys as well. So I see Odess, and forgive me if I pronounced that incorrectly, you wrote shot selection. So thank you, Odess. And Jeff, you echoed the same comment.
You could maybe try to see if they're like defending when they're under pressure, mm-hmm. or are they trying to go for stuff that's not necessarily there, like their mm-hmm. awareness of being yes. In a winning position, in a neutral position, or in yes. a defending position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. Anyone else? All right, that's good. So we got some ideas, and obviously the more you guys start analyzing the video, the more you guys get into this, the more sort of things that you will start to see when it comes to all of this. Now let's go from here. Mental. Let's say you had to look at some mental aspects of the game. What might you look for from a mental perspective?
Did they break a racket after losing the match? No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. You're not wrong, man. You see that a lot.
Yeah. Biggest one I've seen is slumped shoulders. That not looking like you're prepared. You're a little down.
Yeah, absolutely. Slumped shoulders. I see Odess and Adrian write body language, and twins because they wrote it at the same time. I like it. So absolutely, body language, slumped shoulders. One thing I noticed in a lot of juniors is they don't slow down. They just continue. So they'll get the ball and they'll just serve. And there's no pause, there's no stopping to think, no stopping to gather themselves for a minute, no reminder of, hey, here's some of the process and the tactics that I actually want to try and execute. It's just go, 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 go. And they're rush, 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 rush. So to me, that's a big mental one that I see a lot of juniors do. And truthfully, I get caught up in it sometimes too. And this also goes into the idea of, are we playing the way we want to play with our energy, with our style, or are we going and doing what our opponent is doing? So, you know, you play an opponent who plays hard, fast, volley, 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 and they're like quick to serve, etc. Are you then echoing and mimicking that? That shows where your head is at. Are you just in follow mode, or are you actually dictating the way you want to play? And you can see all of that through the video as well. So yeah, absolutely. If you train some of your athletes on some mental cues, like I remember hearing about, and I remember seeing David Palmer do this, and then someone explicitly mentioned it, and I was like, oh wow, that's so cool, and that's what he was doing. David Palmer would always go and kind of pull on the tongue of his shoe periodically in the middle of games, and I always wondered why he was doing that. When I was younger and I didn't think about this stuff as much, I was like, are his shoes just like not fitting right? Like, why is he going pulling his shoes? And then I realized that in fact what he's doing is he's giving himself, that's his mindfulness anchor. It's his way he grounds himself so that he can feel certain things, direct his attention to that. And then all of those thoughts about that was a garbage shot, you hit the 10 when you shouldn't have, you need to win this rally and you're going to win the game, whatever it is, all those thoughts suddenly go to the side because you're directing your mind to a physical sensation. So for any of you guys, if you practice mindfulness or you know what mindfulness is, a little exercise that you guys can try now if you'd like, while you're sitting in your chairs, just pause for a minute. You probably have a ton of thoughts going on in your mind. Pause for a second and just feel the weight of your body in your chair. Maybe it's your bum, maybe it's your back. And then take a minute and feel your feet on the ground. And maybe you're feeling there's more weight on one foot versus the other. Maybe you're on hardwood or carpet. You can feel the texture of whatever you're on. Maybe you suddenly became aware of the temperature. Maybe it's warm or cold. Are your elbows resting on a chair or your palms in your lap? Feel the weight of all of that. So what you just did right there is an example of mindfulness. When you were focusing on all those things, where was your head? Were there random thoughts going on, or was your head on whatever I was directing your focus?
In the present moment.
In the present moment. And when we're playing squash, where do we want to be? In the present moment. So just what the exercise we just did is something that someone could practice regularly through anything in their life, when they're driving, when they're walking, when they're eating, drinking water, whatever it is. Feel temperature, sensation, touch, sound, whatever it is. And you're training your brain to stay in the present moment. And that is a vital skill when you're on the squash court. So if you train your students to have some form of mindfulness anchor, whether it's what David Palmer did, pulling on the tongue of his shoe, whether it's wiping your hand on the wall and like genuinely feeling what you're doing as opposed to just doing it, you can see all those things in the video. And all of a sudden you'll say, hey, I thought this is an anchor we talked about. You did it once in a full match. Is that effective? Is it ineffective? Is it working? Is it not working? Then you can start having those conversations. So that's an example of mental. And then physical. How could you look for certain things from a physical perspective?
If they're really gassed, like they're really gasping for air, you could probably see that in the video.
Yeah. If they're gasping for air, you see them like bending over, like hands on hips, like leaning over.
Their lunges are labored,
not getting out of the lunge as quickly as they were previously in a match. That could show muscular endurance or lack of muscular endurance. If they're stalling in between rallies, shows that they're probably gassed and they're trying to take time to catch their breath. Lots of kids will, wipe their glasses all the time or untie their shoes because they need to get extra time to catch their breath. Those are all signals that we can look for and actually say, hey, in this match, you tied your laces 4 times. And every time you tied your laces, it was in the last 3 points of a game. So that's fine. You did what you needed to do. I'm not judging, but it's an indication that maybe we need to work on your fitness and your conditioning or your endurance. You know, you let that ball go and you didn't try, even though you had been picking it up all match. Why? Because you were tired. It could be physical or mental, probably both. So those are cues that we can then use to then again raise their awareness, because they might not even realize it. And then when they see themselves do it, like, oh crap, I did do that. Now I got to work on this. We can tell them as much as we want, but sometimes they just don't believe us. So they need to see it. Okay, any questions before we jump to the next section? Okay, good. So next one, continue a little bit of what we talked about. I'm going to show you some things that I've done on the YouTube channel, where I looked at a swing comparison, and I looked specifically at Cameron Pilley, and I broke down what I term natural deception. So he's basically coming in with the exact same swing in 3 different scenarios from the same match, and he hit 3 different shots. So if you're working on deception with your student, you know, like sometimes we'll feed the ball, nice easy feed, and we'll say, hey, hit a drop or a drive. Well, from a drop, maybe their swing is here. On the drive, the swing is here. There's no deception because you're not selling the shot. Well, by showing the video, you can actually show them, hey, your swing looks totally different when you're hitting a drop or a drive or a trickle post or a cross or whatever it is. So that is one use that I found to be pretty easy to kind of leverage. You could look at a T position analysis. You could show them side by side. So this video I created here was just showing people the idea of the floating tee and how you adjust your tee position based on which part of the court the ball is being played in, as well as the quality of the shot that you just hit. So if you hit a really tight ball into the front corner, are you pushing up onto the tee because it's glued to the side wall? They have minimal choices other than a counter drop or maybe something straight. You're cutting off the angles by moving up. So you can see all those sorts of things in the video. This was a video I created where I kind of looked at, this one you can't really use you could use it, but not in the exact same way. But this video I created where I looked at a few rallies from historic matches between Jahangir and Jansher, and I looked at some rallies of modern match between, say, Ramy and Gaultier. And what I did, and this was tedious, so I wouldn't recommend it, but what I did is, because I've always had this question, I'm like, man, how much has the game changed from the past to now? And what I did is I broke down some of these epic rallies. There were, you know, almost either anywhere from close to a minute to like 2 minutes long almost. And I looked at how much they were volleying, how many shots they played into the front court, how many from the mid court, how many from the three-quarter court, how many were hit off the back wall. And what I wanted to see was how much has the game changed. And I noticed from this that Jahangir and Jansher were actually hitting a lot of volleys, like similar percentages off the back wall, so they weren't letting a ton go back. They were attacking a reasonably similar amount. So for me, this was like an interesting one. It's obviously not representative of the whole era of squash because they're like only a few rallies that I looked at, but I thought that it was interesting to see it. So, you know, if you, for example, and I haven't done this yet, but it's just an idea. If you have a student that's 15 and they want to go compete in the British Open under 19, it's like, okay, you could go and watch a match of a British Open under 19 at a higher level and just watch a few rallies and see what's the average rally length, what's the average rest between rallies, how much are they attacking, how much are they volleying, and it'll give you a sense of the style of game that's being played by those athletes. And then you could go back and look at your student and pick out a couple of rallies and get a sense of, hey, how many balls are you volleying that you could volley? How many balls are you letting off the back? And right away, you'll get a good sense of, hey, you need to be attacking this much and you're attacking this much. So you need to step up your volley game. Now, how can you step up your volleys? Is it a mental cue? Or is it every time you're on the tee, your first step is back instead of across? Is it that your tee position is super deep and not high enough? You got to start. Is it that your racket is going down instead of coming across? Those are then all of the starts of questions and things that you can start analyzing once you get a sense of what degree or what style of game needs to be played at that level. So that's an example that you could leverage if you wanted to. This was the video I created where I just showed a bunch of scenarios using Paul Cole as an example because he has a very traditional technique, and showing how when he's under pressure in certain parts of the court, how the racket prep changes. So if he's in the back right corner and the ball is dying, he's not starting his swing up here. He's starting his swing lower because you have to come from down up to lift the ball, for example. If you're going off of a rally length off the back wall, well, then you can have a higher prep because you have time and the ball is not going to fade. So, showing little things like that. And again, depending on how many nuances and things like that you want to show your student, you could again do that little video comparison, like an image comparison. My image, Paul Cole's image here, the student's image here, and suddenly they'll see, oh wow, my racket's like, because I see this with my students, everyone struggles in the back corners. They go in, rotation is often an issue, timing of movement is often an issue. But one thing is, we're always told from when we start playing, get your racket up, get your racket up, get your racket up. Now when the ball's fading in that back corner, they're going in here and they can't get down in time. So now you have to adjust your backswing a little bit and get lower to line yourself up with the ball. So if you can see the way a pro does that, maybe they'll realize, oh, wow, okay, I don't need to go with my racket up all the time. And I do need to start slightly lower with my racket prep. That's another thing that you can leverage. This one I created, it's tough to see, but there are a couple of lines that I drew across. And going back to, if you recall earlier, that question about how you can assess tactics. So one other thing you can assess in tactics is also combinations. So are people consciously setting up rallies, or are they just kind of flying by the seat of their pants? Are they using, hitting good squeezing length and then pushing up on the tee to hunt the volley, or are they just hitting length for the sake of hitting length? Like there was one video I created and I noticed this like super obviously with David Palmer, and David Palmer would use a straight kill to set up a ton of his rallies. So he would hit a straight kill, try to glue it to the sidewall. Didn't really matter how short it was, but he would use a straight kill all the time. And then he would push up on the tee. So he would hit a forehand straight kill. He'd push up on the tee, poaching a little bit to the left because he was waiting for the person to hit the cross. And then he would jump on the volley on the cross, either drop or drive or whatever it was. So that would be an example of a combination. So if you are consciously teaching one of your athletes or students a combination, you can now see, hey, are you actually executing this combination? And it might not even be a match. You could be recording a condition game where you set the condition to only be that you can score a point off of this combination. That's something I do with my students. And I say, okay, if we're working on straight kill, hunt the volley, let's see how many points you can win only with the straight kill hunting the volley. Record that, and then you can see how effectively they're doing it and kind of where it's breaking down. So that's another example. And the most recent image you see on the screen was just an example of showing how Ali Farag, whenever he hit a really, really tight length, his tee position would shift up like 1 or 2 feet onto the tee, and he would push up right to the short line, and then he would start hunting. Whereas when he was in rally mode, his tee position would be like near the back of the service box. So again, everyone's different because his movement is also crazy, so he can cover the front of the court really effectively. But just to give you guys a flavor of how that tee position can adjust. And then this video, the last image you see, this one took a lot of time, so I don't know how much you want to do this, but it's basically like a charting analysis. So I went through a game and I looked at all of the spots where the player hit either a winner or an error, basically the last shot of the rally, and where they hit it from. And it basically shows how much time they're spending in different parts of the court and what shot they hit from different positions. So you can start seeing, it's kind of like those heat maps that they have on Squash TV, if you watch those. Except what I did is I also kind of color coded them. And I can show you guys a screenshot of this in greater detail, or it's on YouTube if you guys want to check it out. I color coded it. So, for example, if there's anything near the left service box, it might be red or green. If it's red, that means they hit an error from there. If it's green, they hit a winner from there. So now you start seeing, okay, whoa, all of a sudden you hit 3 volley drop errors on the backhand, all from the service box. Well, why did that happen? Were you rushing it? Were you not in the right position? Was your technique a little bit off? Like, what's going on? So by creating this sort of charting analysis and looking at winners and errors, you can get a good sense of where they're winning points from, what shot they're hitting to win the points, and where they're making errors from. Again, time consuming, but very, very valuable if you guys want to put that effort into it. So those are examples of kind of things I've looked at when I've created videos over the last few months. Hopefully some ideas for you guys. Let's talk about some of my mistakes. Actually, before I get to my mistakes, any questions? I got really excited, so I kind of started rambling. I hope I don't lose anyone. Okay, I think we are all good. So some things that I kind of figured out over time before recording, always check your battery. So whatever that is, you got to check your battery. We use, if it's your cell phone, we use your cell phone so much that sometimes we don't even realize we're like 20% battery. Video takes up a ton of energy, so you're going to be out in a few minutes probably. So something to think about. Depending on what you want to capture, make sure you have enough space, make sure your camera's positioned in the right part of the court. Obviously, if you're putting, you could technically put your camera in the front of the court to see that perspective, but you just want to be careful because if the ball hits it, right, like it's game over. So maybe put a shield, or you have a GoPro, maybe they have like protectors or something like that, depending on what you're using. Something to be thoughtful of. If possible, record during a quiet time or on a side court, because if you're on a main court, people often come by and then they may not even realize that you're recording, and 3 minutes of your 5-minute video has someone like partially covering the frame. So I know it sounds silly, but it's happened to me. So it's something that you guys can think about. Talk to your student in advance. I would say if you're having a lesson and like, hey, today we're going to record, because you're like, what? I'm not comfortable recording. I don't know if I want to do that. You don't know the person. So I would always kind of have that conversation in advance and don't just spring it up last minute. I already talked about purpose and intention of recording, because that'll determine what you want to do, how you want to do it. When completing your analysis, this is an important one. If you know that you're studying movement, when you're watching that video, don't look at anything other than their feet. We get distracted. Don't look at the ball. Don't look at their swing. We have a tendency to start going everywhere. Only look at their feet. If you're only looking at their swing, don't worry about their movement. Only look at their swing, because you're going to start processing all these things and then you're going to lose focus and get distracted. That's how you're going to find subtleties. And then even more important, believe in your value. So if you're going and creating videos for your students and it's going to take you an hour to do an analysis, my recommendation is don't do it for free. Like, we all have this tendency to go and say, hey, I'm going to do this video analysis, and yeah, it's going to do this and that. But at the end of the day, it is your time, right? So I would encourage you to value your time. If you're spending 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours outside of stuff like really getting in depth, creating analysis, stuff like that, I would say value your time. And I know this is like psychologically the hardest one, because we all have like inner stuff that goes around this. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but really try and value your time. And here are a couple of sample analyses that I've created over the last while. So what I would encourage you to do here is think about are you doing this from a business perspective now? So you're like, I want to analyze videos, I'm going to start charging people, I'm going to start doing this. Or is it kind of just for a student that's already existing? That might impact how you do it. Are you potentially doing it for a coach who might not have as much experience as you? Or is it for a student? That could impact things. That will change how much detail you put in. Do you use screenshots? Are you going to have a one-on-one discussion afterwards? So on and so forth. So this was one, just like a screenshot of one that I created for this coach. After I created the YouTube channel, this coach from the US reached out to me, and he had a student who was a little bit more advanced than he was, that he was comfortable coaching. So he reached out to me and he said, hey, I really, appreciate everything you do. Can you possibly help me with one of my students? So I analyzed the video for him. And in this case, I just kind of put high level kind of information and some drills and suggestions that I would make. But then I let him take over from there. I didn't get into like crazy detail, because I'm like, he's a coach. He's going to figure out what drills he wants to use. Here are the things that I noticed you can do. And then I shared some examples of YouTube videos and stuff like that of how some of the pros were actually doing some of the things that I recommended. And then I let him run with it. So that could be one approach, depending on how hands-on or hands-off your client or whoever it is. And then the other approach, this is for someone I'm working with right now. I actually took screenshots of areas where I thought he had certain deficits, so I could give him something really detailed that he could internalize and kind of learn from. So in the first screenshot here, you see, his opponent's in the front right, and his awkward. He has his left foot forward in front of the right instead of being left back, right forward. And this way, he gets really twisted up if he has to go back for a cross or if he has to go to the back right. He never knew he did that. So until I showed this to him, he was like, oh, wow, no wonder I feel so stuck on the tee, like when the ball is going into the front corner. Or this one here, he was serving and he took such a shallow step from the tee that it took him like 2 steps from the service box. It took him 2 steps to get to the tee. And by the time he actually got to the tee, the other guy's hitting and he's rushed from the very first point from the first shot. All I said was put your left foot closer to the edge of the service box, take a bigger step forward, and then you're on the tee, and it improves your angle for the serve. This was like such a quick fix for him, and he noticed an immediate improvement. So doing little things like that, you can make a massive difference with like little to no practice, and you probably won't realize these things until you start seeing it, seeing the videos themselves. Any questions about these analyses or how you can create them, what to leverage? No, I think we're good.
I could
Oh,
add
sorry, go ahead.
just one little thing about the
Please.
mistakes you've made. One of the mistakes I made that you haven't made that I want to share is the
Please.
storage on your phone.
Yes.
You need to have the space because when it bogs up and it's completely full and it stops in the mid-match, it's no
Yes.
fun.
Thank you. That is one that I've made, not with squash videos, but doing other things. So thank you. That's awesome. And then here's the last little thing around, you know, depending on what you're trying to do you need a software or do you not need a software? So, you know, they have tons of software options. This is just one that I used only because my dad knew about it, and he's like, oh, it's really easy. So, and he already had a license. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to use it. And they're super simple. Point and click, you can draw lines, you can slow things down, you can add comments, you can put shapes, you can put subtitles, like you can do all sorts of stuff through these softwares, and they're really easy to use. You literally like, is anyone interested in kind of knowing a little bit more detail about a software, or is that not really? I see Giselle nodding. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit. So this software is called Camtasia. It's not the best software. It's like any other software. It'll suit your needs. All you do is you literally drag in your video file, and the video file, you see these rectangles at the bottom. The video file shows up like this, and then you can build in this software. There's something called annotations. You literally drag and drop whatever shape or comment box or whatever you want, and it pops up where you drop it, and then you just drag it around to the exact time that you want stuff, and you can it's literally that simple. You just drag, set it up where you want it to be, and you can type in your comments. See, like you see these two rectangles here that are highlighted in yellow. These are two lines that are literally those two lines that I placed on the court. I made one of the lines a firm, like a full solid line. One of them is a dotted line, just to show two different tee positions that the players are taking. And I could just drag and drop that, move it around left or right, however I wanted. So a lot of these softwares are that simple. There'll be in this software under visual effects, there's something called for slowing down speed. So all I do is I drag and drop that onto the video clip itself, and then I can slow it down from regular speed to half speed or quarter speed or whatever speed I want. So it's really, really easy to use these softwares. But again, it takes more time. It does. There's a very small learning curve, excuse me, but it does take more time to do all of this stuff. And truthfully, if you're looking at it for your students, you probably don't need a full software to do stuff. If you have other ambitions, then for sure, go for it. This is just a screenshot from my phone. I recorded a video of one of the girls that I coach, and I just took a screenshot to show her how she's stepping or not stepping into the ball when she's hitting a backhand, how she wasn't rotating her shoulders effectively when she was setting up for her volley backhand, and so on and so forth. And just by seeing this, or even seeing the video of herself doing it, she's like, oh wow, I didn't realize, because we keep talking about rotation and she doesn't rotate. So just something like this can show. And the suggestion I made earlier was, you know, you could have this, and then you could take a screenshot of a pro from a YouTube video, put them side by side, and then all of a sudden she would realize that, oh, hey, when the pro's setting up, their shoulders are like this. When I'm setting up, my shoulders are like this. No wonder my racket is like opening up and the ball's coming into the middle, and I'm not generating power because it's all shoulder, and so on and so forth. So that's how you can kind of show some of these other aspects. So Giselle, what phone apps are people using, and are you storing everything in your phone memory or another platform? That's a good point. Yeah, if anyone is using other apps, please share, because I have not used phone apps. Whenever I take my videos, it just goes onto Google Photos. Luckily, when I got this this Pixel, it came with like a bunch of storage space for free that actually just ran out. So now I'm probably going to either have to start paying for storage space, or I'm going to find like external drives, maybe get like a 2-3 terabyte drive or something like that. It'll be $150, and that way I can just keep storing a bunch of stuff. The other thing I do is once I finish, especially the YouTube videos, I then start dumping them because they just take up so much space, and they're uploaded on YouTube in this example. I mean, if you're not using, you could actually create a YouTube channel, because I don't know if there's a capacity for upload. You could create a YouTube channel for your students, put up all the student videos there. There'll be private links. You just share the specific link for the student and give it to the student. And that way, once you've uploaded it on YouTube, you can dump it from your phone, dump it from your laptop, whatever it is. That might just work really well. Because if you already have a Google account, it'll be linked to YouTube, and you can just go from there. And it won't be public because no one will have the links. We just share the specific link with the student. All right.
I'd like to share something if you give
yes,
me a moment.
Please.
For the people that are using either iPhones or iPads, the iMovie is very, very powerful. It's free and it comes native to the actual devices. You can do pretty much what he's doing there with iMovie. And for storage, Dropbox is a good option, and Google Drive as well. But most phones now, they have like 128 gigs or 256, so you can store most of it, and then you can put it, once you're done, you put that in Dropbox, and then you send that link to your student. And the YouTube channel is another good way to go about. The advantage of Dropbox is they can actually download it physically on their laptops or whatever. But yeah, iMovie, and I use Wondershare, Filmorama, which is pretty much the same thing that HUD has here. But it's not very expensive, and there is a learning curve. But once you get around to it, it's pretty easy to use. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Definitely. Dropbox, Google Drive, all awesome, and they have storage capacities like 15 gigs and stuff like that. But that's actually the other thing. You probably don't need to record in like 4K 1080p HD, right? That takes up a ton of space. So just change the settings on your phone so you record at a lower quality, and then you'll have like ample space for all this stuff. I didn't think of that until now, so thank you, Sebastian, for raising those. And Odessa mentioned Dartfish. I don't know what Dartfish is, but you guys can definitely take a look at that as well. Any other comments or questions around this? Okay. And that's it for me. I want to open it up to any questions, any thoughts, feedback, whatever you guys want to share. Was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Jeff, go ahead.
Thanks, Ahad, for a fantastic presentation. So yeah, if anyone has questions, now is a great time to go ahead and ask. If you want to put them in chat, then I can facilitate them, or if you want to unmute and turn on your camera and ask, by all means, go ahead. Any questions?
One last little comment, if I may. I coach out of New Brunswick, and we have like clubs that are sometimes very small and it's very limited the amount of space you have behind. So in order for me to get a full match in certain venues, I'm using a fisheye lens, and you can buy that at Amazon. It's just a little thing that it clips on your existing camera of your phone, and it'll allow you to film the whole court even though you're super close to it. Just a little tip.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I know some of the newer phones, which are obviously exorbitantly expensive, have this capacity now built in. But I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to spend that much money on a new phone. But if you have the fisheye, which fisheye lens do you use, Sebastian? I might actually check one out. Or do you have a recommendation? Anything?
It's just you have, it goes with whatever phone model you're using. You have to make sure it's compatible to that, but it's generic on Amazon. Fisheye lens adapter for whatever phone you're using.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Either I was so fantastic that you guys have no questions, or I went straight past over everyone's head. I don't know which one it is. Hopefully I was fantastic. That's where I'm going.
Well, I
No, I
think
appreciate the comments. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Go for it.
yeah, I think in the the interest of time, just
Mhm.
looking at it here, as we push the at least the 1 o'clock hour here in Ontario, and maybe for Giselle it's still very early in the morning out in BC. Not sure what it is for Sebastian out in New Brunswick, but it's probably mid-afternoon there. So I would say if people have questions, typically, as most of you know, you've been on our webinars before. If you have questions, you can funnel them through me and I'll share them with Ahad, or I do share our presenters email. So if you do have questions, you can ask Ahad directly. So I can't thank Ahad enough for a wonderful presentation. I mean, a couple of things I took away from it, and as a coach, but in a different sport, I mean, you really have to believe in the process with respect to video analysis. And Ahad, you really touched on some really fine points that I know I can take away for curling as a coach in a different sport. And I would imagine everybody on today's call can take away. And it's really the big thing is taking away the whole idea of getting buy-in from your athletes. A video analysis is a great tool to use in making them a better player, or even from a coach perspective. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Ahad. A couple of housekeeping notes. I will enter this webinar into the CAC Locker database today or tomorrow, and everyone will get a PD point provided you're a certified coach. So you will get credit for that. Going forward, upcoming Squash Canada Coach PD webinars. This was the first one we had on the list, but we will be announcing in the next couple of days a couple of more webinars. First one up in November will be one on effective communication. It's going to be called Food for Thought, and it's going to be presented by Barb Cooper, who is, as most of you know, our only level 5 squash coach in the country, master coach developer, chartered professional coach, pretty much a master of everything when it comes to coaching and squash knowledge. And so she's going to talk about how you can be effective and efficient with respect to communication in your coaching, which dovetails really nicely on what Ahad was talking about today. We're going to have a webinar on the Rule of Two and the responsible coaching movement put on by the Coaching Association of Canada later in November. And then other topics we're going to have throughout the season include things like coach insurance, risk management, grow your mindset. Ahad will be back later in the season as well with another great topic around mindset and things like that as well. So we will have a ton of great topics this year. If you have other topics you want us to consider, please send me an email and I will explore those options to get them on the calendar. But otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to attend today's Squash Canada Coach PD webinar, and have a great afternoon, everybody.